We've all seen this before. That point when you tip the camera upwards towards a building and the verticals start to converge. It's a shot that, if done with intention, can look really good, but often we don't want our buildings to look like that. There are solutions, however. Join me today as I explain how to solve the problem of converging verticals. So converging verticals are when you tilt the axis of the lens upwards and the straight lines within an image, the straight upward lines within an image, start to converge at an infinity point. It's a look that, if done with intention, can be very dramatic, and it's something that can be used artistically. But very often, if we're shooting stuff such as architectural shots or urban shots, perhaps iconic landmarks, we don't want those converging verticals. Now, there are solutions to this. Some of them are positioning and perspective. One of them is equipment based, and the other solution is software based. And we're going to talk about all three today. The images that we're going to look at were taken down at one of my favourite buildings in Newcastle, the Bridge Hotel. And I was doing a recce shot there to see how I could shoot this particular building. So I've shot these images not with being particularly artistic in mind. However, they do work for the purposes of this video. Now, the problem is that the shot that I want to get, I can't get back far enough. And even with a wide-angled lens, I have to point that lens upwards. Now, as you can see in this image, this is taken straight in front. This is the look that I want from this building, straight on the facade of the building. I can't get back far enough to get that image because right behind me is Newcastle Castle. Now, here I have two options that I can use to change the perspective and actually get the verticals less significantly converging. The first is to get higher, and behind where I'm standing in this shot is a staircase, and I can walk up that staircase to the entrance of Newcastle Castle, stand at the top of that, and it's elevated me perhaps 2 or 3 meters, and it helps reduce those converging verticals. However, that's not particularly the shot that I want, and it's also very limited for putting a tripod up there if I want to do a long exposure. Now, the other option I can use is to move further back. And the only way I can do that is to go either side of Newcastle Castle. And if you go further back and then you zoom in, you make those converging verticals much less prominent, and to the point where if you can get back far enough, you can eliminate them completely. However, if I do that, the two shots that I can take from either side of this castle, I don't like. That's not the composition I want. The composition that I want is right in front of the castle, looking straight at the building. Now, the other option that I mentioned is equipment based, and there's a type of lens called a perspective control lens, a PC lens. And what that does is it changes the plane, the light comes in and hits the sensor or the film if you're shooting film, and it allows you to change those verticals from converging to upright. It's a tool that's used by all architectural photographers and all photographers that need precision in those verticals. However, they are expensive and they are cumbersome to use, and you're probably going to need to use a tripod to get those verticals. So what are your other options? Well, the other real options are in software. And there are a number of tools out there these days that can change those converging parallels into something much straighter. Now, there is a trade-off. You're distorting the image. These tools have got much better in trying to preserve the image, but very often you'll find that there is some sort of distortion. If, for example, you had an absolute square box and you had to correct the verticals on that, that box might become slightly rectangular. Now, if you're an architectural photographer, that's unacceptable. However, for the most of us that are just shooting stuff that might go on stock agencies, in magazines, or just for ourselves, the majority of people are not going to notice it. So doing it with software is a great way to do it. And today we're actually going to jump into Lightroom and have a look at two tools that we can use to correct those converging verticals. The first one is Adobe Lightroom's own tools, converging vertical or image correction tools. And these have become more and more powerful over the years to the point where they are very good tools. And the other is DxO ViewPoint 5. Now, if you've been following my recent videos, I'm on a bit of a journey with the DxO products. And the beauty about a lot of these DxO products is they actually integrate right into Lightroom. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the edit first of all on Lightroom's tools, and then we're going to do it in DxO's ViewPoint 5 and see if we can make a better job of it in ViewPoint 5. Now, if you're interested in purchasing DxO's products, I have a 15% discount code. The links are all down in the description below. You'll see the discount code there. They're well worth having a look at. Many of them have free trials as well. So if you're interested in those, have a look at those. But for now, let's jump into Lightroom and let's see what we can do with our converging verticals. So this is the image that I want to work on. It's the Bridge Hotel, and I think you can make a fantastic shot from this. It's a wonderful exterior. However, I'm not going to do any of the creative editing on it. We're merely going to look at the perspective control tools on how we can actually correct this image. And first of all, we're going to take it over into the Develop module and have a look at the Adobe Lightroom controls, which we come to by scrolling down here and using the transform tools. And the most obvious tool to use are these grid line tools here. And what you do is you draw a grid line that actually matches the converging parallel. Now, you can do it just for the inside of the building, but I find it's actually better to take it from the outside edges of the image. So I'm going to take it just around here on this column on the bridge here and bring that down like that. And I'm going to take it on this lamppost here as well, which is our left-hand converging vertical. And we'll pull it down like that. And you'll see that instantly we've got a better image. But you'll also see that it is a little bit squashed in, if you like. You'll also see that we've lost the bottom area here and the edges where the converging verticals have been corrected. That means that we have to crop tighter, and we can either choose to keep our horizontal format or maybe crop it in tighter and go for a vertical format image. The problem is that we don't have enough room around this image, but we're going to have a look at that a little bit later on. However, if I press enter, that's done a reasonable job. We can actually correct the rotation and various other aspects of the image. I think the rotation is probably very slightly off. We can change the Y offset and the X offset, moving it up and down within the frame. But in general, I think that's reasonable, but we have to accept that we're probably going to need it in a vertical format. You can see there is some sort of distortion. This door on the right-hand side now appears to be significantly larger on the door on the left-hand side, but they are in fact the same size. It's just one of the drawbacks of using software. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to reset this. So this is the image that we're going to carry over into DxO. But as I talked about before, we do have a problem with not having enough room around this image. So we're going to try and solve that before we take it over into DxO. And we're going to do that in Photoshop. So if I right click and go to Edit in Photoshop 2026, we'll wait for that to open up. And there we have it. And what we're going to use is we're going to expand the canvas. So we're going to take the crop tool here and we're going to move it up to give us a little bit more room above this particular tower, because we don't have that room. And we're going to just drag it out very slightly as well to see how the generative AI will work. And to simply do that, we're going to go to generative expand and we're going to tell it what we want it to do. So expand the image to the edge of the canvas, matching current image. And there we go. We do have a bit more room around the edges. That has not come out very well on this edge. It's a very complicated edge. It looks a little bit better here, but we have this room around it now that we can crop in, and it just gives us a little bit extra space to work with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this image. We'll wait for it to save, and then we're going to take it over back into Lightroom and work on it. So that's done. If we go over to Lightroom, that should now have saved in Lightroom, and then as you can see, it instantly goes to this new version. Now to open DxO ViewPoint 5, we simply do the same as we did with Photoshop, right click, edit in, and ViewPoint 5. We're going to edit a copy with the Lightroom adjustments, so that will carry over the Photoshop adjustments as well, and we'll click edit and wait for that to open. And there we have it in DxO ViewPoint. And as you can see, there are a lot more tools available to us here. This auto button will automatically correct lens distortions. However, it will only work on the original file. So because this is an edited file and we have had generative AI added to it, it's not going to work. However, our perspective tools are here. And let's just click on auto to see what sort of job it does. And there you can see instantly it does a really, really good job. The distortion on the bridge is still fairly obvious, but we can crop into that. We would still have to make this a vertical image, I think. But overall, it does a very, very good job. But we also, if we take the auto off, we also have the same tools as we did in Lightroom. But I think they are actually a little bit more intuitive and certainly easier to use. Everything's bigger. The loop makes it much easier to line up on a vertical. So if we come here, for example, we're going to line up the loop there. And we're going to line up just there. I think that works really well. And we're going to line up on the edge of the lamppost here. As you can see, this loop is much, much easier to use than the Lightroom one, and it just seems much easier to control and position accurately. So that's the lines put in. Let's click apply. And you can see it's done a pretty decent job. We still have that same problem of the door on the right looking a little bit smaller than the door on the left, and that's never going to go away. However, by adding that generative sky in the background, we've got a little bit more room above our tower here to work with. And we can also play a little bit with the way the image looks. One of the things that you have in ViewPoint is all these tools here that allow you to micro control the way the image is looking. So this is a wider grid. If I slide here, you'll see that I can control just the top part of that image. And the same by manipulating any of these points here, I can much finer control the image. And we have several of these grids that get progressively smaller like this, that allow you to really, really fine control the distortion within an image. So if we go back to the corrected image that we've done with the vertical lines, we can also control the way the image looks. So if I use this up down, we can either increase or decrease those converging verticals to a way we look. Sometimes it's acceptable to have a little bit of converging verticals at the expense of saving the extra distortion in the image. So by doing that, we've got a more natural image. The door on the right is beginning to look a little bit better. It will never be perfect. The left-right tool will change it in this plane. If I do it, exaggerate it, you can see that it swings it forward and backwards around the left-right plane. And this tool here, the HV, is the horizontal vertical ratio. And this is a tool which we can use to help get rid of some of that distortion. If I swing it left here, you see it's all compressing down a little bit. But if I bring it back up and come a little bit to the right, +3, we start to get a more natural looking door on the right hand side. So the image is beginning to look a little bit more natural as we play with this horizontal and vertical ratio. And that's an important thing to do if you want to get the images looking more natural. So of course we don't have enough space around this to make a landscape image, so we're going to crop it down into a vertical format. We'll have an unconstrained crop here, so we can crop it much of the way we want. We'll want to try and get these old bins out of the left hand side of the picture, perhaps keep a little bit of the bridge in the foreground here to the right of the picture, and if we just come up and give it a little bit extra sky like that, we'll come in a little bit like that. Press crop, and there we have it. And that image is significantly better than the original. It's never going to be perfect, as I said, but for the people that want to get good urban shots that are not absolutely critical in terms of the way they look, using these perspective control software tools are absolutely brilliant. The Lightroom one is really, really good, and if you only have Lightroom, you'll definitely get some good results with it. However, the DxO ViewPoint 5 does have a lot of extra tools and a lot of extra power to it. I haven't touched on all of it in this particular image, but it does have significantly extra to the Lightroom version. And if we save, that will just take us back into Lightroom with this corrected image. Come over to Lightroom here, And there's the corrected image. So there the images finished. Both of the tools do a reasonable job. They're not a perspective control lens, and you should never think of them as a perspective control lens. If you've got some critical architectural work that you need to shoot, you need to either rent or buy a perspective control lens. But if you're just trying to get a shot where you're getting rid of those converging verticals, then software approach is really good. Now Lightroom's is really nice, it's very easy to use and it does give really good results. But DxO's ViewPoint 5 really has a much better range of controls. You can warp the image much more deeply, you can change micro elements within that image and just move things around to get a better look. And these days, combined with AI regeneration in Photoshop, we can put space around our images and use these parallel correction tools to make really striking images. As I mentioned, I have a discount for DxO products. That's in the description below. If you've got any questions about correcting converging verticals, either in software, hardware, or by just simply changing perspective, let me know in the comments below. If you have any other solutions, I'd love to hear about them. And if you've enjoyed the video, a like would be fantastic. A subscription would be even better. And if you know any photographers that might benefit from this video, please feel free to share it. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.